On Entertainment Tonight.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Mikhail Gorbachev today showed that he controls the levers of power in the Soviet Union. On short notice, he called a special one-day meeting of the Communist Party's Central Committee, and he used it to promote dozens of his allies and sweep away scores of rivals. CBS News Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson has the story.
Behind the Kremlin walls today, Mikhail Gorbachev staged one of the largest and most dramatic purges of the ruling Central Committee in recent Soviet history. And tonight at party headquarters, they tallied the results. 74 of the 301 full members removed. Among them, former Soviet President Andrei Gromyko, who lost his Politburo job last fall. Gromyko and the others were described today as on pensions or in ill health. But many of those removed were labeled by critics as the dead souls, who haven't pushed hard enough for reform. Officials insisted that all resigned on their own and the resignations quickly accepted.
That decision was taken unanimously.
24 non-voting members replaced those ousted, virtually all loyal to Gorbachev for bringing them to power during the 1986 Party Congress.
Doesn't mean that the struggle for power and policy is over in the Soviet Union. It just means that Gorbachev has won a very important battle along the way.
The recent Soviet elections, with the rejection of old-line party members, may have given Gorbachev the clout needed to make his move. And the continued decline of living standards makes the move imperative. Anger is growing over the failure of his reforms. His enemies may have sensed that he was becoming vulnerable. In the end, Gorbachev followed one of the oldest political rules: get your enemies before they become strong enough to get you. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
Besides his rivals at home, Gorbachev also has the NATO alliance off balance and wondering, not knowing exactly how to react to a Soviet diplomatic offensive in Europe. Today, with great fanfare, 31 Soviet tanks turned around and rolled out of Hungary, the first in a unilateral Soviet cutback. Tom Fenton is on the scene.
These T-64 tanks were the first to leave today as the Soviets began their cutbacks from Eastern Europe. The departure of the 13th Armored Division and its support troops will be followed by an airborne assault unit, a missile regiment, and a fighter wing. Over the next year, a total of 10,000 men and more than 450 tanks are to be sent home. All of this is happening at a time when the United States and its allies are squabbling over how to react to Gorbachev's initiatives. As one observer put it, the Soviets seem to be winning the disarmament race. Few Hungarians can remember a time when the Soviets were not here. But this woman remembers the day when they came. 33 years ago, she hid herself in her home as the tanks rolled into Hungary to put down an anti-Soviet uprising. Hungary declared itself neutral and said it would leave the Warsaw Pact. Russian tanks and troops ended all that. In today's reform-minded Hungary, newly legalized opposition groups are again calling for a neutral Hungary. So far, the Soviet response has been muted. Although this young driver wasn't even born then, his unit was one of the invading divisions that crushed the 1956 rebellion and never left. According to the Soviets, it will now be disbanded. Some of these tanks will be scrapped, some will be used for training, and some will be given to farmers to be used as tractors, a modern Soviet version of beating swords into plowshares. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Kishkun-Halas, Hungary.
Amid Gorbachev's charm and arms control offensive in Europe, U.S. Defense Secretary Richard Cheney made it official in Washington today. The first Bush defense budget will target some of the favorite programs in Ronald Reagan's defense buildup for spending reductions. CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin has the particulars from Star Wars missile defense on down.
After just 39 days on the job, Dick Cheney delivered what has to be the most candid admission ever by a Secretary of Defense.
I've heard senior military commanders say, I'm sure we probably wasted 50% of the defense budget over the last 40 years. The problem is, I don't know which 50%.
Officially unveiling the first Bush defense budget before the House Armed Services Committee, Cheney outlined in stark terms just how far Ronald Reagan's plans for rearming America have fallen.
If the original 5-year defense program approved in 1986 had been implemented, we'd be here today talking about a defense budget of approximately $479 billion for next year. Instead, we're talking about a defense budget of $305 billion for next year.
Under that budget, the Navy has to give up its cherished goal of a 600-ship fleet and even retire one of its aircraft carriers. The Air Force has to give up its goal of 100 MX missiles, settling for 50 carried on rail cars. The Pentagon's most glamorous project, the B-2 stealth bomber, is being delayed a year, and Cheney clearly has his doubts about the plane's future.
We've got problems with the B-2. I'm reluctant to reassure you that it's all under control and we know exactly what we're doing on the B-2 program, because I don't think we do yet.
Research on a Star Wars missile defense will also be slowed down with a spending cut of $7 billion over the next 5 years. Other programs will either be canceled outright or cut short to save money. But the chairman of the Joint Chiefs warned there is a price to pay.
We are looking at the prospect of a net decline in U.S. military capabilities.
Cheney pointed out that what's happening to the U.S. military may not be all that different from what's happening to the Soviet military. Gorbachev has announced a 14% cut in Soviet defense spending. If this latest Pentagon budget is approved, the U.S. will have cut its defense spending by 12% over the past 4 years. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
There's been a new development in the Alaska tanker spill. The Coast Guard released tapes of radio conversations held after the Exxon Valdez hit a reef a month ago. They indicate that despite Coast Guard warnings, the tanker captain apparently went ahead and acted in a way that could have created an even greater disaster. Correspondent David Dow in Los Angeles has details.
Captain Joseph Hazelwood's first report to the Coast Guard 23 minutes after his ship ran aground sounds understated in light of the tragedy that would soon become evident.
We fetched up hard ground. Evidently, we get some oil, and we're going to be here for a while.
About 40 minutes later, a cryptic, unexplained reference to third mate Gregory Cousins, who was piloting the ship at the time of the accident, though unqualified to do so in those waters.
Joy over here. A little problem here with the third mate, but...
And this conversation with Coast Guard Commander Steve McCall indicating that Hazelwood was trying to maneuver the ship.
We're working our way off the reef. The vessel has been holed, and we're ascertaining right now we're trying to just get her off the reef, and take it slow and easy, and I'm telling you the obvious, but take it slow and easy, and we're getting help out as fast as we can. We're pretty good shape right now, stability-wise. We're just trying to extract her off the shoal here.
Then a final word of caution from the Coast Guard commander.
Before you make any drastic attempt to get underway, you make sure you don't start doing any ripping. You got a rising.
Had the damaged ship actually broken free from the reef, the Coast Guard said today it could have meant a worse tragedy.
Honestly believe that the ship stood a good chance of sinking, or at least heeling over.
But the Coast Guard declined direct criticism of Hazelwood, while his attorney insists the captain did not try to maneuver off the reef.
In fact, he took action to keep it on the ledge by dropping his anchor and working his engines forward.
Meanwhile, the crippled tanker tomorrow will undergo inspection to determine if it's ready for another voyage, to be taken to a repair facility in Oregon. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And still to come on the CBS Evening News, a report on the Mexican earthquake that brought more fear than damage. And Frank Courier on still more betting accusations in the long, long spring of Pete Rose.
Pain. Pulsing, throbbing pain. There is a wonder drug for pain. Doctors themselves take more than extra-strength Tylenol or Advil. More doctors take Bayer for pain. Bayer is the wonder drug that works wonders.
This is a warning to household germs. You can't hide from Lysol brand disinfectant. It's hospital type, the best kind you can buy. So germs, don't say you haven't been warned.
Along with the fiber, are you getting something extra in your high-fiber cereal? All of these cereals contain sodium and added sugar. Fiber One, however, is low in sodium and has absolutely no added sugar. And you get more fiber in Fiber One. So get more of the fiber your body needs and less of the stuff it doesn't. Get Fiber One.
My favorite city in the world, Old San Juan. Let me show you the rhythms that echo through the night. Let me show you a chef who knows more delicious secrets than stars in the sky. Let me show you a culture 500 years strong, and how this ancient city can capture the heart forever.
Puerto Rico, the shining star.
New chapter in Washington tonight about book deals, politicians, and ethics in high places. A prominent Republican senator's name is now the latest to come up in connection with a questionable book contract. This comes as House Republican Whip Newt Gingrich today defended the partnership that promoted his book and took more than $100,000 in tax write-offs. Gingrich has been leading the ethics attack on House Speaker Jim Wright for, among other things, a questionable book deal. CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer is tracking the Capitol Hill finger-pointing on ethics and how what goes around comes around.
Newt Gingrich, the Republican firebrand who filed the ethics complaints against Wright, was defending his own publishing arrangement today for a book he and his wife wrote called Window of Opportunity. A group of supporters paid $5,000 each to form a partnership to promote the book and make a profit, and paid Mrs. Gingrich $10,000 to manage the effort.
What we did legally correct, we did ethically correct, we did it out in the open, and it is above board. And I think that's a huge difference between us and Jim Wright.
Gingrich says the supporters sought no special favors, but Mrs. Gingrich became so angry at reporters' questions at one point she abruptly left the room. With emotions running high, Democrats now want Gingrich investigated too. And the affair could boomerang on another Republican, Minnesota Senator David Durenberger. CBS News has learned that the Senate Ethics Committee is now taking seriously charges filed during last year's campaign concerning publication of these books written by Durenberger.
Well, I suspect that the Democrats wouldn't have filed a complaint if it hadn't been for Jim Wright. I mean, that's the main reason they did it, because they knew it would be news.
At issue is Durenberger's arrangement with this Minneapolis printing house. It published the books and managed the senator's speaking engagements for 2 years. What Durenberger earned from the appearances was listed as promotional fees to encourage book sales rather than speaking fees. Thus, he was able to pocket about $100,000 more than senators are normally allowed to keep for making speeches. Since the Federal Election Commission approved the arrangement, Durenberger says he did nothing wrong.
Having gone through the appropriate regulatory authority, I can see no reason why there's any problem here.
Sources confirmed, however, that members of Durenberger's staff have been questioned by the Ethics Committee, and one source says the probe could become what he called a big deal. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
A federal appeals court in San Francisco threw out the 1986 conviction of Richard Miller today, the only FBI agent ever found guilty of spying for the Soviets. The appeals panel said Miller is entitled to a new trial because the jury should not have been told the results of Miller's FBI polygraph test. Miller is now serving 2 life terms plus 50 years. He was convicted of passing U.S. secrets to his Soviet lover in exchange for sex and cash.
If every time you look around it seems like your rug is dirty, try Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner. Because it contains the ingredient Fiberpel, it keeps your heavy traffic areas cleaner longer than the other liquid spray. Trust Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner.
Suddenly, the English muffin takes a new turn. Oatmeal Goodness Bread introduces English muffins with oat bran. All the important oat bran of a bowl of oatmeal in each one. And a crunchy, chewy taste you can't turn down. New from Oatmeal Goodness.
Hey, Tippett. Whatever it was, it's dead.
Very funny, Flutie. I always do this to my shredded wheat.
Didn't your mother tell you not to play with your food?
I learned this from my mother.
I knew that. I did.
Now, this shredded wheat is great no matter how you eat it because it's nutritious whole wheat with no added sugar or salt.
Hey, Flutie, you better try spoon-sized shredded wheat. I wouldn't want you to strain yourself.
Originally, I was taking aspirin for my headaches. Aspirin would sometimes irritate my stomach, and I called the doctor, and he told me to try Tylenol. It wouldn't cause the stomach irritation that aspirin can. Tylenol really worked for me. It got rid of my headaches. I didn't have any problems after I took Tylenol.
Lana Carson trusts Tylenol.
its pain reliever is in a class by itself.
It's a wonderful pain reliever for me, and it works great.
The U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear arguments tomorrow on one of the nation's most closely watched cases and divisive issues, abortion. Tomorrow's case could decide whether the court will now roll back the 16-year-old landmark ruling affirming a woman's right to choose to have an abortion. CBS News and the New York Times have polled more than 1,400 people nationwide trying to gauge the latest public attitudes about abortion. Correspondent Terrence Smith has the results.
A CBS New York Times poll shows that a decade of intense argument on both sides of the abortion issue has done little to change basic public support for legalized abortion. When asked if a woman should have the right to have an abortion if her doctor agrees to it, 63% said yes, 24% said no, and 10% said it depends on circumstances. That base of support for legalized abortion has remained relatively constant in the last decade. But the poll also shows a fundamental public uneasiness with the issue. When asked, for example, if abortion should be legal as it is now or only in cases of rape, incest, and to save the life of the mother, a much smaller number, 49%, would keep the law as it is, while 39% would limit it and 9% would not permit it at all. And when asked if abortion is the same thing as murdering a child, a striking 48% agreed with that proposition, while only 40% disagreed. Finally, what difference would it make if the Supreme Court made abortion illegal? Most people, 52%, believe it would not significantly reduce the number of abortions. Expert opinion is divided on how much impact the abortion issue demonstrations have on the Supreme Court.
I think that a justice who looks upon 300 or 400,000 people marching are people trying to appeal to the Supreme Court as though they were a legislature would be inclined to say, I am not going to be swayed by this.
I think that's a nice, lovely legal theory, but they are 9 human beings. Many of them have been in political life.
Mail at the Supreme Court has been running 20 times the average in recent days. Much of the lobbying has been directed at the perceived swing vote.
We're really dealing, in this case, with one justice as a practical matter, I think. At least that's what I think most of us think. And that's Justice O'Connor.
But regardless of how Mrs. O'Connor and her colleagues vote this time, the battle over abortion in the courts and in the court of public opinion seems certain to continue. Terrence Smith, CBS News, Washington.
Today's Tuesday. Started moving yesterday and my arthritis pain acted up. More pain today. Took aspirin both days.
If you take aspirin often, make it tri-buffered Bufferin. 100% aspirin plus 3 buffers. Bufferin if you take aspirin more than once a week.
Now a single glass of water can give you as much soluble fiber as this plateful of oat bran muffins. That's right. A single glass of water has as much soluble fiber as 2 bowls of oatmeal. A single glass of water with a spoonful of Metamucil. Metamucil, the natural fiber for regularity. Surprised? Don't be. Your doctor knows ounce for ounce, Metamucil has 5 times more soluble fiber than oat bran. Today's high-fiber diet includes the right foods and Metamucil every day.
And every day, more and more people are discovering what Metamucil is really all about.
Natural soluble fiber Metamucil. It can make a daily difference in your health.
Now at Red Lobster, one great thing deserves another and another. Introducing our great seafood trios. For a limited time, find 6 new trios starting at $7.95. More of everything you crave. Like 3 great tastes of lobster, a new trio of shrimp and crab. Something for everyone. Starting at just $7.95. Kids dinner $1.95. Don't miss the great seafood trios at Red Lobster. And don't forget Secretary's Week. Celebrate with lunch at Red Lobster.
A pretty powerful earthquake shook Mexico City and Acapulco today. It damaged some buildings and killed at least 1 person. For many people, it was a terrifying flashback to the quake that devastated Mexico City in 1985. Scott Pelley has covered for CBS News.
The earthquake panicked this city, which still carries enduring memories of the 1985 disaster. Today's tremor struck at about the same time of day, 8:30. Buildings shook a full minute. Everyone was panicked, she says. Maybe a lot didn't happen, but we are terrorized. A local television newscast was on the air.
Un temblor en estos instantes, hay un
Temblor aquí en la Ciudad de México es un temblor fuerte, estábamos por presentar.
Power was lost for a short time. Schools and offices were evacuated. The center of the quake was 40 miles from the resort city of Acapulco. Little damage is reported there. In the capital, despite the fear, it was soon apparent this quake was not a repeat of the great disaster.
Comparing this earthquake with the magnitude 8.1 in September of 1985, that 8.1 gave off about 100 times as much energy as this 6.8 that we had this morning.
The 1985 quake killed an estimated 10,000 people. Hundreds of buildings collapsed.
The damage may have been slight because of a construction ban that is still in effect from 1985. The federal government has forbidden the rebuilding of high-rises in the part of the city that is most susceptible to earthquakes.
Tonight, the headlines read, "Only a Scare." But in 1985, there was a powerful aftershock, and for those who remember, there is relief, but also apprehension. Scott Pelley, CBS News, Mexico City.
The Prime Minister of Japan went on national television today confirming that he has decided to resign. But as Bruce Dunning reports, his announcement did not end Japan's political crisis.
Prime Minister Takeshita apologized to the nation for undermining public confidence in government. But he demanded a price for quitting. He said Parliament must first approve the long-delayed national budget. Opposition parties have boycotted budget hearings, calling for a tougher investigation into the bribery scandal. Takeshita's resignation sent the stock market soaring. Investors hope that passing the budget will get the government moving on other crucial economic problems. A Tokyo Broadcasting System poll released tonight said 85% of Japanese interviewed approved of Takeshita's resignation, but almost as many said this would not end the scandal. Takeshita's likeliest successor is Masayoshi Ito, one of the few politicians not tainted by the scandal.
But Ito would be only an interim prime minister because of his age and poor health. The ruling party will have a hard time finding a strong leader who is untouched by the scandal that continues to unfold. Dan?
Bruce, what effect will this kind of instability have on matters such as the trade negotiations with the U.S.?
Dan, there are a number of major issues that have to be negotiated very soon, and the Japanese will be at a real disadvantage because all of their negotiators will be lame ducks. For example, later this week, the Bush administration will probably name Japan as a flagrant violator of free trade principles, and the Japanese will have to deal, without a strong leadership, with the consequences of that decision.
Bruce Dunning in Tokyo. Straight ahead, more gambling accusations against Pete Rose.
If I didn't care more than words can say.
Someday, someone will convince you to try Kellogg's Nutri-Grain. 6 healthy whole grain cereals with no sugar added or preservatives.
Would all this be true if I didn't care for you?
Whole grain Nutri-Grain.
What about my connecting flight?
Miss, the weather is delaying everything.
I've only got a weekend pass.
Just as there are headaches
Now the computer's down.
and headaches, there's aspirin and there's Anacin. Clinical tests show Anacin relieves headache pain better. The Anacin aspirin formula provides a more effective level of pain relief than regular aspirin. Better relief.
Weather's better.
And your headache?
Not just better. Better.
Anacin. Not just better. Better.
The old gray Subaru ain't what she used to be. Introducing the larger, more powerful Subaru Legacy.
A late-breaking story. A one-time Florida farm worker was freed after more than 20 years behind bars this evening. He always maintained that he never poisoned his 7 children. Now a judge says he may be right and may have been framed. Correspondent Bruce Hall is covering this dramatic turn.
For the past 21 years, James Richardson has sworn he is innocent, that he did not poison his 7 children. Today, a Florida judge said the former farm worker, who was illiterate at the time, did not get a fair trial and ordered him immediately freed. Richardson's release followed a one-day hearing during which his attorneys produced documents claiming the original prosecutors knowingly used perjured testimony and withheld evidence to gain the conviction.
Today, at long last, we examine the facts to determine how the tragedy became a travesty.
During the 1968 trial, prosecutors said Richardson gave a powerful insecticide to his 6 girls and 1 boy in order to collect insurance. But attorneys now say the original prosecutor knew the children were never insured, and that a former babysitter, now confined to this nursing home, has confessed to poisoning the children. However, the man who put Richardson behind bars still says the release is a miscarriage of justice.
Mr. Schaub, why did you decide to prosecute this case?
When?
Why?
Because the man's obviously guilty.
Prosecutors now must decide if they want to retry the case. Meanwhile, James Richardson said he just wants to go back home, visit his family, and the gravesites of his children. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Titusville, Florida.
The worlds of baseball and gambling are reeling today from yet a new set of betting accusations against Cincinnati manager Pete Rose. Correspondent Frank Courier is covering.
Ohio bookmaker barkeeper Ron Peters, a key figure in the Pete Rose gambling probe, has told federal investigators that Rose placed bets with him for 2 years, totaling more than $1 million. Part of it, sources tell CBS News, was wagered on baseball. It's the latest, most troubling allegation against Rose, the beleaguered Reds manager, under investigation for illegal betting and tax violations.
It's out of my hands. You know, one thing you have to realize, I'm not doing the investigation. All I'm doing is cooperating every way I can to get it over with. Everyone seems to be dragging their feet. It's not hurting anybody, though. The only one that affects is me.
The betting allegation from Peters, who was awaiting sentencing on drug and tax charges, was revealed in federal judge Carl Rubin's chambers during a conference sparked by a controversial letter. The letter to the judge, signed by Baseball Commissioner Bart Giamatti, cited Peters for being candid, forthright, and truthful in the investigation, for providing documentary evidence to support his testimony and that of others. For his part, the judge says he is offended by the commissioner's letter on behalf of Peters, annoyed at Giamatti for meddling in a case which does not concern him, adding that in his opinion, there is evidence the commissioner has a vendetta against Rose. Giamatti's chief investigator John Dowd insists the letter was not a request for leniency, but Rose's attorneys and others disagree, saying Giamatti has compromised himself.
By acting in the fashion that he did, Giamatti has participated on one side of the issue and has so compromised his position that there's no appearance of fairness that can be given to any hearing that he conducts.
It's not just Giamatti Rose has to worry about. The judge confirmed a federal grand jury is looking into his taxes, which according to experts means big trouble for Rose.
There must be some evidence more than just hearsay or circumstantial. There most likely is some paper trail someplace.
With dual investigations continuing, Pete Rose must now wait for 2 verdicts. His fate resting in the federal courts, his career in the hands of another judge and jury, the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Frank Courier, CBS News, Cincinnati.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
I'm Harry Smith. Tomorrow on CBS This Morning, the right to an abortion goes before the Supreme Court. We'll talk with women who've made the hard choices in a special hour tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.